we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? So we've got these two huge family holidays, in a sense, back to back. And with a lot of intensity, a lot of pressure on us to do all kinds of things. We've got to wrap up the end of the year if we're in business, if we're in school, and different things like that. We've got to prepare for the holidays, so sometimes there's a lot that we do in our house, and there's for those who do a lot of gift giving, there's a lot of intensity there. For those who are planning year-end parties for business or for friends, there's a lot of intensity there. And then a lot of times we're traveling. And then also at the end of the year, a lot of people make their transition. They do. A lot of people make their transition at the end of the year. It's like they're just going to go out with the year. And since there are a lot of holiday gatherings, it's a good time for people to say their goodbyes. You know, of course, we know that we're eternal, and as the beautiful quote from Millard Fillmore said, perfection is our true reality, and it's our eternal true reality. And still, there's the appearance that we might not see them for a while, right? So there's all this intensity that happens at the end of the year. And what I have found is that the deepest spiritual practice we can have, the most effective spiritual practice we can have, is to forgive. To be forgiving all day long. Forgive, 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 forgive. And a lot of people, how many of you have been trained about forgiveness? Yeah, not that many people, right? So I think of my 12-year-old nephew, and he and I were talking about his math homework the other day. He's getting a lot of training in math. But who's training him in forgiveness? Right? That's up to the family. How many of you, your family, did such an awesome job training? Oh, see, people are already starting to laugh, like, ha, 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 right? So it's up to us, those who are in a spiritual community, to actually know all there is to know about forgiveness and have it as a living practice so that we can actually demonstrate it wherever we go, wherever we are. Whether it's in, I used to live in LA, and one of the most intense parts of my forgiveness practice was in the Whole Foods parking lot. It seemed that every day, no matter what time you went in, there was somebody who had just come from yoga that was really upset that you were ruining their yoga buzz by taking their parking spot because there weren't enough parking spots at the Whole Foods. So we learn to practice forgiveness wherever we go, wherever we are. And one of the ways that I like to do it is when you're on the phone with the bank, because now you get these fraud alerts and things like that. And so for me, they're an opportunity to practice forgiveness, where the bank sends me a text message at 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone is off, and they say, did you make this charge or is it fraud? And then I wake up at 6 o'clock and I turn on my phone and I respond to the text message, yes, that's my charge. And they immediately respond with, well, we declined it because you took so long to reply. So you'll have to call them and have them put the charge through again. And I think that's not helpful to me. Why are you texting me at 3 o'clock in the morning, expecting me to respond? It's not helpful to me, so I have to forgive whoever designed that system. Or just not judge them in the first place. Just not judge them in the first place. So we have all these just constantly all day long opportunities to truly practice non-judgment or forgiveness, whichever you like to call it. And it's relentless, isn't it? It's just relentless. It's how life is. And what I discovered for myself is my commitment to practicing forgiveness is what brought me peace. It's what actually brought me peace. Because I didn't used to have any peace. I thought it was my job to keep track of who was right and who was wrong, and who was good and who was bad, who was naughty and who was nice, like Santa's helper and God's helper, and had pointed out to them, that this is not right, this is not good, this is bad, this is wrong, and I know the better way. Please listen to me, I'm just trying to help you. And so I created a lot of forgiveness opportunities for other people. Most especially anyone who really loved me. So I knew a lot about forgiveness before I was actually trained in forgiveness. And here's how I got trained in forgiveness. When I was in the practitioner training, which is, I guess, similar to the teacher training in the Unity organization. So in Science of Mind, we have Science of Mind practitioners. And so when I was in that training, one of the things we had to do was we were split up into small groups, and our small group had to put on a workshop. And we had to meditate and vision about what the topic of the workshop would be. So I was with 8 people who by then were my friends, or certainly good, strong acquaintances. And we visioned together, and week after week we kept getting, it's about forgiveness, it's about forgiveness. So we designed a workshop on forgiveness to put on for the congregation as part of our requirement for our training. I learned so much through doing that. And that workshop that we put on was so life-changing for everyone in the room and everyone who facilitated it that it became a very important part of my whole life, was sharing what I learned about how to actually forgive. Because as I was talking about yesterday, back in the 80s, I lived in New York. And I was walking around the reservoir in Central Park with my best friend, and I was complaining for the millionth time about how my parents had ruined some part of my life in some way. And Joseph had heard it a billion times, and he said to me, "Honey, you just have to get over it." And I just felt like picking him up and throwing him in the reservoir, or grabbing him and shaking him and saying, "Don't you think if I knew how to get over it, I would be over it by now?" But I felt so much like a failure because I didn't know how to get over it. I didn't know how. I wanted to know how, and I didn't know how to find out how, because God bless them, so many people just tell you, you've just got to forgive them. But that doesn't help anyone. Just have to forgive them. Right? Right? That's why people drink, because they don't know how. They don't know how. Right? Why do you drink so much? Because I don't know how to forgive anything. It's just building up inside of me. It's what it keeps me from becoming a human whirling devil of a thing, It's just drinking. And especially around the holidays. It's just the truth of it. It's just the truth of it. So once I learned how to forgive, just the basics, I became so excited and enlivened by it because I saw the difference that it made in people's lives. Because once you really know how to forgive, you can get over anything. When you really know and you're really willing, you can get over anything. You really, really can. And how I learned this was just God expressing in, through, and around me. In that first workshop, there were people who, we actually did some dry runs with people who had stuff going on. We said, would you come and we'd like to run our forgiveness processes by you, see how they work. And so we did these dry runs and we learned so much. And one of the things I learned was that people would come to the workshops and they would say, I'm here because when I was a child, my grandfather raped me. Or when I was first married, I found out that my spouse was having an affair with my business partner. And then I had to deal with that. And then my business partner ran the business into the ground. All these different kinds of things, I've had all kinds of people who were locked in closets for years. All kinds of things that I've worked with people about forgiveness. People who are just really, really tortured, all kinds of things. As well as people who just have to forgive that they got a bad nose job from the plastic surgeon. No, and they went back twice and it still doesn't look good, and they have to get over it. You're laughing, but that is really traumatic for people. It's right there on their face. So all kinds of things. People who have had, one surgery and it hurt them in a way that now they're dealing with it for years. All kinds of things happen. So what I learned from this is many people would tell me, I have forgiven this so many times, yet it still bothers me so much. I think of it every day. Why can't I let it go? Why can't I let it go? I want to let it go. I want to forgive. I want to be free. Why can't it work for me? And them asking me that question, when they first started asking me, I didn't know the answer. I didn't know the answer. But I just asked with them. I asked God with them, why can't they get over it? And it came clear as day to me, because what they're saying is, I want to be free, but I don't wish to give up my judgment about them. I don't wish to give up my judgment about myself in this. I don't wish to give up the meaning I made of it. I don't wish to give up my interpretation of it. I only wish to be free of my suffering. And there's no forgiveness in that. There's no forgiveness in saying, I just wish to be free of my suffering. There's only forgiveness in saying, I don't know what anything is for, except that I am willing to make the leap of faith to say, everything in my life is a blessing. How many of you are familiar with the teachings of Emma Curtis Hopkins? Right, she taught the Fillmores. She helped them to heal and so inspired them through their own healing that then they became students of hers and teachers as well. And that's why we're all sitting here today, really, because of Emma Curtis Hopkins in a certain way. So one of the things she would say is she would say silently in her mind about a situation that she didn't like, she would say, you are of God and I demand my blessing from you. You are of God and I demand my blessing of you. And that's the stance that we can take. We don't have to take it with, like that. We can just simply say to the fraud alert people, you are of God and I demand my blessing of you. Or even better, a lot of times what I like to say is, I'm willing to receive my blessing from you now. You are of God, and I'm willing to receive my blessing from you now. What that does is that immediately shifts our energy that there is a blessing here that I haven't been receiving, that I can now shift into receiving. But you see, when we're not forgiving, when we're in judgment, we're thinking that this is bad and it's wrong and it's not got a blessing in it for me. It's torturing me, it's hurting me, it shouldn't have happened, somebody's to blame, somebody should be punished. And there's no way to be in that space and say, but I forgive them, and have it mean anything. Do you see? So that's I'm a Course in Miracles student, and the Course in Miracles tells us that you can't look on something and call it a sin and then say, I forgive it, and have any kind of a healing that way. So in other words, if I'm saying this shouldn't have happened, and you're wrong, and you're bad for doing this to me, then I'm actually saying, hey, God, get out of here right now. Don't need you. I can see through all directions of time and space. I know what everything is for, and this was meant to hurt me. And I'm not going to forgive it. I might say I'm going to forgive it, but I'm not going to change the meaning that it has for me. I'm going to carry this around. And that's how we get stuck. And that's how we get stuck. And then because of that, imagine doing that a few times a day, or even once a week, for how many years, how many decades, right? One of the most intense things that I've seen is when people have been really hurt, really, really deeply hurt, and yet by someone else, so they think, and they are in this place of, I'm trying to forgive them, I'd like to forgive them, but it's just not happening because they're still holding on to the meaning that they made of it. They don't often realize that the one they need to forgive first is themselves. Because very often I talk with people, even where you think, well, that doesn't make any sense, but I talk with people who were sexually molested as a child. And they participated in it. They didn't run screaming from it. They didn't fight. They participated. And they feel guilty and ashamed for it. Maybe they even got some excitement from it. They felt special. And then they realized later they were into it too much and it was icky and bad, and they realized how it twisted their heart, their mind, and they blame it all on the other person. But secretly, they're blaming themselves. Maybe they're not even aware of it, that they are blaming themselves for having participated, for not having fought the person off. And so they judge themselves so intensely, but they're not even consciously aware of it sometimes. And this has to be let go of first. And say, I was just a child. Children are so impressionable. They'll do so many things. They'll go with you. And, if they think there's going to be candy or just they love you, they care about you, they've been told it's safe. Children do all kinds of things. And they're afraid to speak up. They're intimidated so easily. But people hold it against themselves that they should have known better, even at such a young age. So the self-forgiveness, in other words, the self-judgment, has to be let go of before they can let go of the judgment of others. But they don't even know it. But it happens all the time. And as we are coming towards this major holiday, in between the two holidays here, what I have seen year after year in the folks in my community who are actively practicing forgiveness through releasing the meaning they've made of things, they're able to experience a new experience in their family. Wonderful stories. Somebody just told me a story the other day that they've had a terrible time with their immediate family for decades, but they've been really practicing forgiveness and non-judgment. And so they made a plan to go be with their family for Thanksgiving for one day, flying in, one day, one night, out the next day. Quick as you can, right? And they just decided that they were going to not judge anyone at the dinner. And usually at Thanksgiving dinner, nobody wants to sit next to them because usually they're just pick all through the whole time because they feel so insecure, because they feel so unloved and unlovable. Instead, they're turning it around, well, you're the one that's unlovable. You're the one that's the problem, not me. But this year, they decided, I'm just going to love and appreciate everyone. And I'm going to be glad I'm there and just keep being grateful. And don't you know, everybody wanted to sit next to them this year. And they were fighting for a chance to have a few minutes, go for a walk after dinner, and spend time with them. And they felt so welcome, and the family was insisting that they come back for Christmas and stay longer. First time ever in their family. You see, we share the same mind. We always think it's them. They have to go first. And one of the most beautiful things I ever learned in my life, which I began to practice in my own family, was, let me go first. I'll go first. Okay, I used to be the first one offended. Now I'll be the first one to forgive. because I've seen my whole family completely transform. The way they talk to each other is now different because of my spiritual practice. My family doesn't have a spiritual practice. I don't talk about these things with them because they're not interested in them. They don't ask me about them, and I'm not their teacher in this way. I'm the teacher by demonstrating. I'm the teacher by demonstrating how not to take offense. That's how I teach forgiveness in my family, is how not to take offense. Even when offense is intended. Even when offense is intended. Because that does happen. It comes up, of course. We're having a human experience. People say things intended to smack you, right? Or to tweak you, right? So then, if you can just take that as a cry for love, something's going on with them. That today they feel off-centered. Today they feel vulnerable. Today maybe they feel worried or frightened about something I don't even know about. So why not choose to actually live the unity principles, live the love? That's why my radio show, I call it Walking the Talk and Living the Love. It's a so much better way to live. I used to think I was right all the time, and now I'm interested in being right-minded. Right-minded. Oh, so many times I don't know what's going on. I can't see beyond time and space. I don't know what anything is for. So my interpretation of it isn't going to help me. So I've learned to just let it go, because then I can have more peace. My life is easier. And you know what? Then I'm more receptive to insight, to wisdom, to clarity. And my life is more joyful. And I've yet to meet anybody that says, "Oh, girl, I got too much joy. I got to take this joy down a few notches. There's just too much joy and happiness in my life. I'm ODing on it. I don't know what to do. It's keeping me up at night. I'm so happy." Right? I've never met anybody that said that, ever. But the blocks to joy are our petty grievances, and even our big grievances. I used to think that holding on to those big grievances protected me from being hurt again. I used to think that. Has anybody ever found or proved that holding on to the big grievances protected you from being hurt again? But have you ever believed that it would? That if you hold that grievance up in front of you like a shield, that somehow it would protect you from having it happen to you again? If you keep it in the forefront of your mind and you're ever watchful for it, that it would somehow protect you from having it happen again? No, but more likely, because our thoughts have so much power in this world, more likely that you recreate it, or you just keep re-experiencing it in your mind as though it's actually happening again and again and again. And then when we do that, because we know deep down that we're doing it to ourselves, we begin to feel hopeless and helpless. And that's how I felt. I moved into a place where I felt suicidal. I felt hopeless and helpless. Like there was something terribly, terribly wrong with me. And I didn't know how, any way, to get over it, to fix it, to stop it. I didn't know. I was so lost in it. I just thought death is the only way out. And the only thing that kept me from doing it right before Christmas was the love of my family. That even though they were hard on me and we had a lot of difficulties, I knew that they loved me. And if I killed myself, it would ruin their lives. And I didn't feel I had the right to do that. I didn't feel I had the right to do that. But I didn't know how to manage anything. I didn't know. And that's what actually propelled me to start to have a spiritual practice. Because I thought, I got to do something. I got to do something. And so I started to meditate. And I began to find my way back, or for the first time, to a right-mindedness. And what I've learned is that if you can even forgive 51% of the stuff that you've been holding on to, you pop into a whole new way of looking at your life that's really completely different. You get to that tipping point of 51%. You don't have to get to 100%. You don't have to get to 80% or even 70. 51%. And all the people that I've met, they've been able to get there, or they're on their way there. They feel they can do it through an active practice of understanding what forgiveness is and how to do it. And it really is releasing the judgments, the meaning that you made of